Call meeting to order. Please take the roll.
Reverend Childs.
Here.
Ms. Collins.
Here.
Ms. Guido.
Here.
Dr. Jacobowitz.
Here.
Ms. Jordan.
Here.
Ms. Lau.
Here.
Mr. Michael.
Here.
Mr. Shaughnessy. Ms. Shear.
Here. Stand with pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please raise your hand for moment of silence for Mrs. Yvonne Sill, former teacher, Kingston coach, who passed away this past week. You can see it. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of collective bargaining under the Taylor Law, ASPA, matters leading to employment of particular individual or individuals and employment history of particular individual or individuals, including number 2687, or corporations.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, please go red, and we will be returning as close to 7 as possible. Thank you. And we call the public session meeting to order. We have 2 resolutions coming out of executive session. Please go green. Water. Okay, 2 resolutions coming out of executive session. The first is P34. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of Dr. Paul J. Patalino, Superintendent of Schools, that the board hereby appoints Shelley Corridia to a 4-year probationary term as middle school assistant principal in the middle school assistant principal tenure area, effective October 15, 2018, with a probationary period ending October 14, 2022, at an annual salary of $90,000, initial SBL certification. Entertain a motion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
And just a quick, is there anything to be here tonight? She will be here on the 10th to meet everyone. Yes,
Yes, very much.
will be there.
Second resolution, 18 CSO 8, be resolved upon the recommendation of Dr. Paul J. Patalino, Superintendent of Schools, the following be approved by the Board of Education. Appointment for Kathy Lee, probationary teaching assistant, KHS, step 12, at an annual salary of $28,830, effective October 29, 2018, with a probationary period ending October 28, 2022. I'll entertain a motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
No, she's not here to see me.
All right, that brings us to the first opportunity for public participation. If there is anyone from the public who would like to address the board at this point, the policy affecting public comment is on the podium, it's attached to the podium. Please speak clearly into the microphone, identify yourself so people at home watching the live stream can hear you. You have 2 minutes. Our board clerk will notify you when you get close to the 2 minutes, give you a 30-second warning. If there's anyone who would like to address the board at this point.
Good evening. My name is Bill. I'm a pastor at the Kings Fire Church. Thank you for having me here tonight. I just want to let you know that I made a request through the paperwork that we could use, maybe possibly use the Kingston High School auditorium for our Christmas concert service. We're out of room. It's just that simple. Our church, we're out of room. We don't have the room. You just have the room at the high school. And all I'm doing is asking for some help. That's it. That's all I want to do is ask for some help. If you can consider that, and you don't have to consider that tonight, but I would appreciate it if you would take a look at it. I was an employee for 35 years at Kingston School District, so I know how things work. And I would just appreciate it if you could take a look at it. That's all. That's all I want to say tonight. And thank you all for doing a great job, because you do a great job in what you're doing. You gotta blow a little smoke. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna just come up here and say, and I will commend him, Mr. Catalino, because you know, and the board, because he's made hard decisions. I grew up in the neighborhood of the high school, that's where I grew up. Matter of fact, I used to go in there on some late hours, and he's made some tough decisions. So I commend you on what you did, because it took a lot to do that. So thank you for listening to me tonight. Thank you so much. To God be glory.
Anyone else would like to address the board? All right. Hearing no one. We'll move on to the approval of minutes from August 29th. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Any amendments or corrections to minutes of August 29th? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving August 29th minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Who do you want to say?
No. I'm just looking. Just making sure we're everyone. Okay. And with that, I will turn the floor over to the superintendent. The superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have three things in the superintendent's report today. Our first one will be not by Mr. Clapper, actually, Mr. Clapper's not here today, but Mr. Olson is just going to give us a brief overview of what is going on at the Mahar and Second Century project in lieu of Mr. Clapper's usual presentation, and we will require Mr. Olson to say yay. The way Mr. Clapper does.
He's got some YouTube.
So without the panache that Mr. Clapper would have, I'll just show you some slides that Mr. Clapper would have liked to have shown. So, as you know, the high school is almost on your punch list, and we have that issue at the field house with the staircase that Dr. Catalino might mention in the executive session. Otherwise, it's looking pretty good and it's working pretty well. So,
High school's not finished.
most of the rest of the slides are about Mahar. Those of you who are familiar with Mahar might recognize, is this a reading circle? So the carpet's been torn out of it, and much of the Mr. Clapper would not have appreciated those comments. So anyway, carpeting has been torn out of places like that. Walls have been torn up that are needing to be torn up to prepare for the project. You can see that there's been modifications made here. In any case, the abatement is underway and it's almost actually complete.
The demolition.
Yes. Well, the abatement as well. And the next step of the abatement is the furnace. The furnace, the boiler in this place is going to be actually torn out and replaced by November. So we're going to actually have a new boiler in the heating season this year, which will be pretty good. We thought it was going to be in the spring. So that's an improvement in the schedule. Tom also wanted me to review some projects that were done this summer. And obviously there's a lot of small print here. But
Can you read it that close?
I can read it. In any case, there's, pavement done, generators installed. Those of you who've been around through various schools have probably been made aware of some of these things. I think one of the most obvious ones is the pavement at Chambers, for example. But there's been a lot of work at Mahar in preparation for the project. At every school there's been work done. Tom wanted also to point out, he would have, had he been here, that during the last year, there were 2,309 work orders completed, LED lighting at MCM, fields have been maintained, 29 snow and salt events occurred, 6 million pages, 2.25 million pieces of mail, 500 keys, 877 air filters. So it's a busy group that Tom manages. And in addition to that stuff, all these other items were done within Tom's group. So they take their job seriously, and if they didn't do a lot of the work that they do, we would hire outsiders to do it at probably a much higher cost. So they are economical for the district. Tom wanted to show this, the Facilities Department focus statement, which you've seen before. And it's all the buildings, all the time. And that's what Tom would have wanted to say. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, Ms. Guido, and then Ms. Gillette.
I move that Mr. Olson presents all of the facilities from here on out. But you did say the high school is finished. Can you just clarify the Kingston High School?
Oh, I'm sorry. The
South.
first phase project south is
Phase one.
pretty much not the whole high school. I'm sorry. Not the whole high school.
Thank you.
Mrs. Lau.
So, but the pit that's in Ahmad, what are they going to do with that?
I think it's going to continue to be used for the pre,
Oh, okay,
and
so
they use
they
it for a
just-
similar function.
Read
It's just that they
Yeah.
pour out a, 30 or 40
Yeah,
year
I saw it, but I didn't know.
It didn't look like that.
Yeah, it'll stay, it'll remain, and it'll be part of it. The actual element of the pre-kindergarten library per se will be on the walls surrounding it, and the
Right.
boardroom will be on that, in that close wall where the old library was.
Right.
And the pit, the reading pit,
Story.
the storage pit will still be that.
It would be nice if it could be a jacuzzi as well.
I'm not, no. I don't think that's feasible.
Sorry.
Yeah, that actually will probably be an area in general where people would gather as they're doing the lobbying or now before they come in the board.
In the pit.
Well, not necessarily.
disputes.
Because
Around the pit.
It's not a Roman Coliseum. Not many gladiators in there. Okay, thank you, Mr. Olson, I think. And next we have presentation on our fifth grade and transition program. As you all know, last year we decided that we were doing transitions from kindergarten into the schools. We do transitions with the ninth grade academy, but we weren't doing anything for our students coming from fourth to fifth into the middle school. So Dr. Felicello and Ms. Bonville came up with a plan to run a fifth grade transition to help with that. And we were lucky enough to have Ms. Nelson, who jumped in kind of middle of the summer and decided to take it on for us. We appreciate that, and she's here to tell us how it went.
Good evening, everyone. This is Lori Fay. She was one of the teachers who was teaching over the summer with us. And when I mentioned to her this morning that I was going to be presenting here today, she right away said, I'll come with you. So that's just a testament to the teachers that we have and the dedication of our staff in the district. So the Transition 5 program ran from August 20th through the 23rd of this year from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. It provided a wonderful introduction to middle school to our Bailey and Miller students. The students coming from the feeder schools that feed into JWB went to the JWB site, and the students coming into Miller went to the Miller site. So when I was asked to be a part of this program, I instantly thought, let's kind of look into some other programs that are similar and see what kind of wisdom we can glean from other programs similar to this. And the common theme that I found very quickly was that we have an increase in student attendance that's seen with programs similar to this. We have academic improvement among students participating, and a decrease in disciplinary referrals. So this is a wonderful thing that many districts do, and I'm so pleased that ours is doing this as well. So this program had one administrator. I oversaw both of the sites. I was traveling between the two schools, Miller and Bailey. We had 2 teachers at each site, and we have one of them here. And we had 4 teaching assistants, 2 at each site. We had 2 nurses, 1 at each site. We have our community partners that participated in this with us from Cornell Cooperative Extension. We'll talk a little bit more later about their role in this. And we had 1 student ambassador who was able to give up some of his summer time with his friends and provide leadership and be a mentor to some of these students. He's currently in 8th grade at Bailey School. So these are the program objectives. Okay. So one of the first program objectives was to form realistic expectations about middle school. Students truly just hear what they hear and don't necessarily get all of the information from their peers. So we want them to, before they come in, get some realistic expectations about what they can expect so that they are more comfortable sooner.
The next one is to develop positive relationships with peers and adults. And this is probably the one that I saw the most benefit in as a classroom teacher. Those kids came in knowing 2 teachers at Bailey, so if they had a problem, they could check in with us. They also got to make a few friends before school started, so it made them feel comfortable. As a 5th grade teacher, my goal is to develop those positive relationships with the kids, so it was a nice way to get a head start on that.
And another is experience, and that pretty much speaks for itself. To experience the middle school, have a taste of it before actually coming in with the sensory overload of all those students in the full hallways and so many things going on. So it helps simplify the experience for them when they finally do enter.
And the last one is skills. We wanted to develop age-appropriate organizational, behavioral, and time management skills, which is the key to being a successful middle school student.
So our students were identified by our building principals at the elementary schools and their elementary teachers based on their need. We couldn't take everybody this year. It was a pilot year. We were trying this out. And so we asked the administrators and teachers to identify students who demonstrated the highest need and who were maybe prone to anxiety or stress or apprehension about the transition. We ended up with 21 students at Bailey School who participated in the program, and it wasn't intentional, but we did end up with 21 as well at Miller.
So the daily focus was driven by research on what students struggle with from the transition from elementary to middle school. So day 1 is orientation. That's a big one because a lot of them are coming from smaller schools. They're nervous about going to Bailey and Miller, so they want to know where everything is, how do I get there. So that's what we focused on the first day. We took them on a tour. We did a little scavenger hunt with them and kind of broke them up into groups, and they had to go around the building then and find certain things in the different buildings. So it's also focusing on group work with them. It was the first time they got to work with people that they may not know. We also focused on icebreakers and the teams that are in 5th grade, because they're very curious about how middle school operates. Day 2 was with our buddies from Cornell Cooperative. They were a great asset to this program. They focused on team building. We did a lot of team building games that we even got to participate in. Conflict resolution was a big one. They identified types of conflict and what type of person they are to resolve that conflict. There were 4 types, and they identified with the animal that best fit them. Day 3 was behaviors in middle school. We did true-false presentations. They did take a stand on bullying, so they went to different parts of the room when we asked them questions about bullying. We did more team building games. And day 4 was the biggie, locker practice and time management. How to get where you're going in 3 minutes. So we were having races, but not running races, to get from our rooms to the furthest point in the building to prove to them it can be done in 3 minutes. You can open your locker. So, and that was a big one, and I've noticed that difference. I have a few kids in my class this year from the program, and they were like the ambassadors for the other kids. They were like, oh, you don't know how to do your locker? I know how to do it. I can show you. So it was great confidence builder for them.
I wanted to share an email I received my first week in my assistant principal position at JWB from a parent of a child who went through the program. And I'll read it out loud for us. I know you can all read it, but I want to speak to what this says. It says, I just wanted to let you know how much the transition week helped my son. I really appreciated it. Having this prior knowledge prepared him for this week of middle school. Although he was still worried and had some difficulties, they were on the level of normal change. The program eased him into this new role as a middle schooler, and I can't thank you in this program enough. I hope you continue this program moving forward, as I can imagine how much it will help so many other students who have intense anxiety and difficulty with transitions. So thank you all for supporting this program. Thank you for beginning the program, and thank you for letting us be a part of the program.
For comments, and/or, okay, Dr. Kobowitz and then Mr. Michael.
It sounds great, and it's a great story, and I so appreciate the presentation. I'm really very thrilled that we're doing this kind of transition from middle school. Given that we already have it in these two other areas, but we know that the middle school transition is pretty difficult for many reasons. I'm wondering what your thoughts are moving forward for expansion. You talked about this being a pilot program, not being able to accept as many kids as you had wanted to. So I'm wondering what the plans are for moving forward.
Thank you. So we did utilize Teams through Office 365 as a way to communicate among teachers, since we're on different sites, and the teachers from Miller and Bailey were able to communicate using that platform. And we created a discussion group where we could share ideas for how to expand this and kind of build on what we've learned this year. So moving forward, we kind of have been documenting, and the teachers have been coming up with some really interesting approaches to how we could possibly make this happen at the beginning of the summer, before the summer, so that they're not kind of worrying about it July, August. So there are some interesting ways. Of course, we have to investigate those to see if there are even possibilities, but that is in the works, and we have the ability to share that. So when we do have the discussions moving forward about what to do, we already have the place for the input from the teachers documented, so we can have those discussions.
Wonderful.
Right.
Mr. Michael?
Well, I guess Dr. Jabowitz, takes my questions. I wanted to know, how we can improve the programming. 21 kids, compared with like 800 students, whatever they go into the middle. So hopefully we'll find a way to increase the number of students participate.
We did, I have to be honest, we had a lot of students identified from Bailey and Miller, but quite a few did identify transportation as a limiting factor for the family. But, that's a tough piece. I will say that the families who came each day and did drop the students off and did pick them up sometimes did arrange to carpool with other families, so they did find, some of them found ways around that as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Whitten?
I want to thank both of you for just being excellent at your jobs, because I know that both of them, we're so lucky that we have this kind of staff. But I also wondered, I've longed for this kind of transition program. Do you get a sense that it would also be good, my sense is to expand it to parents as well? Because I think there's a lot of anxiety that parents have along with that transition, particularly into middle.
We did we did a parent presentation the first day that the parents were welcome to stay for, so that kind of answered a lot of their questions and concerns.
Yeah, we kind of used that opportunity as like an open house night as well. We thought, what if we don't get the parent back in? Let's give them as much information we can about the school year. So that presentation did actually answer a lot of school year questions in addition to transition 5 questions. And they came and sat with their child, and then the teachers took the children to the classrooms. And
And the guidance counselors were available for questions after too, so I think that helped a lot as well.
Do we have any kind of program for kids who are coming after that 5th grade? Like if they're entering in 6th or they're entering in 7th? Like now that we've been thinking of that, I think there are kids who come, maybe they've moved here from another place or they're coming out of the Catholic school, and they don't really have that ability to join in with everybody at the same place. I just wonder if we can look at that and see if there's something that we can do.
And I will, Suzanne, just speak to one thing about that. I can speak for JWB, the guidance staff. When we have a new entrant, they find a group of students they think would kind of take them in, and they take them on, the students take the new child on a tour, and they provide a lot of kind of close one-on-one time with that child as well to kind of answer those sorts of questions.
Great, thank you.
Well, just want to make a suggestion, like maybe you'll be able to reach out to more students to be mentors, the first day they come. So the younger kids, I'm sure, will feel more comfortable seeing a lot more students, show them around. So it's something we should consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have, as identified on our goals and our district calendar, we will do our presentations on data each quarter. This is fourth quarter data for last year. As you remember, when fourth quarter ends, we kind of have summer, and we want to still report out on the fourth quarter data from last year. And for that today, we have the teaching and learning team with Mrs. Bonville and Dr. Felicella.
Thank you. So welcome, as Dr. Catalino explained, we're going to just review our fourth quarter data, which is what we use to determine if we've met the goals that we've set as a district for our student achievement. With our DSIP plan, our district comprehensive improvement plan, all of our goals for each of the tenants, whether or not we attain those goals was determined by a student growth measure, by student performance gains of a 2 percentage point increase from spring of 2017 to spring of 2018 on both STAR reading and STAR math. And that is an average of the students in grades 1 through 4. The reason we did not include kindergarten is because they take STAR early literacy. And then the other goal for the middle level is for STAR reading and math at the secondary level, the average of our students' scores in grades 5 through 8. And it's measured by on or above grade level on STAR. So it's really important to know that we're not comparing the same cohort of students. We're comparing the end result of 2017 to the end result of 2018. For our elementary, our STAR reading scores, as you can see, we met the green highlights where we met the goal. The red areas indicate where we did not meet the goal. In some cases, we were just shy. But it also helps us to focus and take a look at where we need to put our future resources and what type of professional development and what type of instructional support we need to put into those places. What we saw our grades 1 and 2, all students at those grade levels met our goal for reading. Grade 3, we had most of our students and most of our buildings met, but we did have a few places where we fell short of meeting that goal. And in grade 4, we did find across the board that our students were not meeting that goal. So that leads us to several conversations and a lot of work around what our plan is now using that data to support our grade 4 teachers and our grade 4 students to ensure that those students attain that goal in the future. This is, again, the same STAR reading at or above grade level comparison, just in a different format, so you can see grade level by building, so our buildings, and which buildings met the goal at which grade level. We found that, and we did have a lot of new hires actually last year, if you remember, at the elementary level in particular, we had a significantly large number for us. And we did find that some of our newer teachers who are going through the curriculum for the first time, that is where we did see some of the dips. So we really looked at this and we thought, where do we need to put our resources? We need to put them into our non-tenured, our new staff, and really train them. So moving forward this year, what we did with our instructional coaches at the elementary level is we assigned them to non-tenured teachers, and they are working for a chunk of time during every cycle, and a solid chunk of time, like 1 to 2 hours in those classrooms to really help those teachers strengthen their practice. So that's just one of the things that we've put in place by really diving into the data. Our subgroups, we're looking at our all students across the board in the average of grades 1 through 4. We did not meet our goal. We only increased by 0.3%. However, I do think it's really important to highlight that our Black students, our subgroup Black students increased by 5.1%. And then we wanted to look at some of our other subgroups. So when we removed our E&L students, our students increased by 0.8%. Our self-contained students with disabilities, without them, we had a 1.1% increase percentage point. And without our E&L or self-contained students, we did meet the goal of the 2 point percentage increase at the elementary level. I'll turn it over to Ms. Fowler.
So I'll start with reading as well. For STAR reading, you can see that we have it broken down by grade level. Like Dr. Felicello's previous charts, the red areas show the parts where we did not have growth, where we had a negative. It's important to point out that this slide is not measuring our DSIP goal. This slide actually speaks to achievement within the academic school year of 2017-2018. But we did want to look at this, of course, and see where our growth was and where our growth was not. So this is our results from that. This slide actually does speak to the Kingston DSIP goal, looking at spring 2017-2018. Again, looking for that 2 percentage point increase, and you can see that the only grade that was able to achieve that goal was 8th grade. Also, as Dr. Felicello has already mentioned, we too use our instructional coaches. This is something that has been shared with the entire teaching and learning department. It has been shared with the instructional coaches and with our principals. And our coaches work, as you all are aware, work with our teachers for 2 cycles or 12 days. So we too have looked, we're able to drill down and look at individual classes in our STAR reports, and we're able to kind of, deploy our coaches where we think that their help could be best suited. In addition, we're very much hoping and believe that the new reading block at 5th and 6th grade will speak to some of this. Hopefully we'll see some more growth, as well as some new software that we purchased this year for that reading block. We have purchased Newsela, or Newsela, as it is called, and Accelerated Reader, continuing to use Accelerated Reader. This just breaks down, looking at just our general ed population. Again, you'll notice 8th grade. And then looking at our subgroups, one thing I do want to point out, we did not meet our goal. We were negative 1.9%. However, we did show growth, very slight in our special ed population, as well as our Black students. One thing I do want to point out, if you look at E&L, we have a 0 rating. We are and have been working, and I know Dr. Felicello has spoken about them, Hudson Valley Auburn, and looking at different assessments that might be more best suited for our L students. The STAR reading is not always indicative, especially for our entering or emerging students of what they're capable of and what their ability is. However, moving forward for this year, principals have been given the directive to give the STAR reading to all students, as well as using some other measures at the suggestion of the Hudson Valley Auburn to try to gauge where our E&L students really are.
So now moving into math, for our STAR math, and again, this is the average of grades 1 through 4. We met our goal at most most grade levels in most of our buildings. We had a few slight dips, Crosby grade 2, GW grade 2, but again, very slight. So for the most part, our students are really doing well with our math instruction, and they're really showing growth, and that's consistent. And this is, again, just the other spring to 2017 to 2018, just a different view of the same information. Kind of highlights each building and which grade levels they did not see growth. And then, again, we can drill down even further at those buildings and really look at it by class and determine where we need to put our support for our teachers and our students. Our subgroups, for math, we did meet the goal. We had an increase of 2.2 percentage points. I'd like to highlight that, again, our black students increased 5.3%. When we took out our E&L students, we went up 2.5 percentage points. Without our self-contained, it was 3.9%. And without E&L or self-contained, we did increase by 4.5 percentage points.
So again, looking at STAR Math, we've shown some great growth. Obviously, when I looked at the slide, the first thing that jumped out at me was grade 7. So that is, again, an area that we are focusing on in terms of deploying our resources. We have added this year, again, to the reading math block, we've added some more software. I know I mentioned the reading software already. We've also, we continue to use IXL in math that we've used in the past, which gives us some great reports and gives us some item analysis and the like. And we also have accelerated math this year, which is a new addition. So we're hoping to see some growth and get grade 7 up where they belong. But in the other grades, we certainly saw some good change. And again, that was within the academic year, that slide. That was just within the same year. This is STAR Math, measuring our DSIP goal. Just like with reading, we saw great results with 8th grade. This is our data for general education students. And I pulled this one for special education because you can see that with the exception of 6th grade, every grade level met the district goal for our special education population. Looking at our subgroups, again, like Dr. Pellicella said, we did well, actually you guys hit it at math. We were at 0.2. However, I would like to point out, again, our E&L students show growth, and that is a really large amount of growth. We're pretty proud of that. And then a small amount of growth of 0.2 with our special education population. Looking at graduation, the DSIP goal spoke to student growth will be measured by a 1 percentage point increase in the August 2018 graduation rate compared to the 2017 graduation rate. This slide shows a comparison between 2017 August. So as you all know, we look at our graduation rate in June, and then of course we have our August graduation, so we add those in. And so we looked at where we were. We were at 83% for all students, and in June of 2018, we were at 80.7. And of course, we broke down the subgroups. One thing I'd like to draw your attention to is our students with disability subgroup went from 65% to 71.4%. And then this slide includes our August graduates, and this slide is very telling to me, certainly, because, again, he's going to be embarrassed when he hears me say this, but Mr. Reinhardt and his team do an amazing job, even over the summer, drilling down individual students. I've literally seen him chasing students down the hall, having them do credit recovery and things like that to get them across the stage in August, and we were all there to see that happen. We see that every group on this slide, with the exception of the multiracial, which remained flat, showed improvement in the rate. And of course, as we've all heard, and we know that it's true, you know, the higher up we go, the harder it is to really see those gains and make those large strides forward. And that is it. Does anyone have any questions for us?
Mrs. Collins.
Yes.
Thank you for all of the data. It's always great to be able to review that. I was just thinking, and you brought it up, I believe, in Farmville, about the E&L students and the assessments. I know that's becoming a big consideration at the high school. Dr. Paolino mentioned earlier, we hired a new teaching aide because we have a real influx lately of students who really can't speak any English whatsoever. I guess I have more of an editorial comment, but it's a shame that that assessment has to be the English regions for those students. Do we have any recourse for that if we're looking at how an assessment can match what we're doing?
So we've been working, we work very closely with Hudson Valley Arbor, which is our resource within the state, and they are currently advocating for different assessments and
What is
also
that, Hudson
for
Valley?
Hudson Valley Resource.
Oh, it's an acronym?
Yes, resource for educational bilingual network. Yes. So, I always forget, yeah, it's a long one. So we call them Hudson Valley Arbor, and they have been working with us, and they are advocating for our E&L students at the state level. Because basically all of the assessments we use are inappropriate for really gauging where a student who's not an English speaker is, you know, what their ability is. What we use for the SIFE students in particular, and those are the students with interrupted or inconsistent formal education that we're referring to at the high school, we use what's called the multilingual language and math screener. And that's offered in 5 or 6 different languages, and that way we can kind of gauge where their academic skills are from in their native language, and that gives us a really good picture of what their capability and ability, how quickly they'll pick up English and adapt to ours. But it is an ongoing issue. If you tested every E&L student, most of them are going to be Tier 3 and RTI. They don't speak English, so it's very hard. So it is an ongoing battle. Currently, we're still, you know, we're held to the state regs, but.
So just to add to that, you know, this is why Dr. Felicel and I are constantly, like broken records, telling people that with RTI, you cannot just look at one measure. You have to look holistically at a child. You have to use multiple measures to determine where a child falls. And then the other thing I wanted to just add, I know I mentioned Newsela a little while ago. Newsela actually comes in 3 different languages, and one of them is Spanish. So one of the things that's great about building that into literacy at the middle level is that teachers can use that for some formative assessment. It's not that summative like STAR or like a Regents, but can give some really useful information to a classroom teacher right on the spot as children are reading an article and then answering questions about it. So that's another thing that we've kind of, you know, another reason why we formed UCLA among many others, but.
And I think one of the things to just point out, and I know there's a lot of questions about the assessments and those kind of things. We're putting the supports in place to get these students where they need to go now. And the board supported some of the resources that we wanted to put into the budget. Again, today, you supported some more resources that we needed. And while we understand the challenge of it, we are going to take that challenge on and get these students where they need to go. It's not, you know, I think a few years ago we talked about graduation rate and people saying, oh, well, this group can't graduate or that group can't graduate. We're not going to say that about our students who come in from, you know, our ELL students. We're going to move our resources to where we move them, move our experts to where we need to move them, and we're going to get them where they need to be.
Mr. Michael and Ms.
I would like to know if we can have the data report uploaded in the library because it's in there. Oh, okay,
It's in the library. It says BOE presentation 9/25.
I was looking into the
This
library
morning,
yesterday.
yeah, well. Mrs. Jordan.
Thank you for the information. It strikes me that there seems to be, as well as comparing from fall to spring, in most cases, there's a dramatic drop from spring to fall. And I just wonder if there's any thought to what we could do to support kids over the summer so they don't have so many losses, because the teachers are working really hard to make strides with the students, and then over the summer, it's almost like they take 3 steps back, and I just wonder if that would be helpful. The other question I have is, in terms of the new programs that you initiated, push-in services for reading, do we have any data around those kids to see if that's been an effective?
As of right now, no, we don't, but what we do have, which I should have pointed out in this presentation, is if you look at our Chambers data for kindergarten from last year, they had the highest percentage of students at or above grade level. They had 60%, which is much greater. The growth was much greater. So they piloted this push-in model last year. Mrs. Petrie felt really strongly, and she made a very good call, that we should do push-in services, that there were too many transitions for kindergarten students, and it would be a more effective use of our reading supports. And her results demonstrated that. So we've replicated that in all of the buildings. So all of our elementary kindergarten students, all of our kindergarten classes have push-in reading support, where they're seeing approximately 75 to 80% of the classroom during anywhere from a 30 to 60-minute block of time. And Chambers and JFK have also moved to a push-in model at grades 1 and 2.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a question. We talked about this at TNL, and we had a very rich discussion about it, but I wanted to go back to slide 5, if that's not too hard. Just because when you look down the lines, for some of these, the changes are actually pretty dramatic year to year. Like looking at Meyer, you go from,
Can you
Sorry.
just
If that's
tell me
it.
what is this it?
Reading.
Yes.
Oh, for reading?
Oh, it's the
go
reading.
from reading, so number 5. They're conveniently numbered on ours.
Doesn't
he
he
know
know
That's
that?
it. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah. So when you look down the school, like look at Meyer, you go from -4 to +27 to +2 back up to 18. And you see those kinds of really big jumps. And I know we're not talking about the same kids. That's dramatic. And in most of the schools, it is dramatic. So I'm just wondering what you think about that. I mean, Chambers is pretty stable. But the others are, so it's just, I don't know if it's just something to notice or something to think about. Edson is pretty
I
stable.
think it's something that warrants further research. We will definitely look into.
And then,
We
you
can,
know, so,
yeah,
and 3rd and 4th grade are difficult. I mean, that's really when we see a really big shift
it
in
is a big shift.
in school and
And also
academics.
the reading, that's where we get more into comprehension.
Right.
And it becomes, and when students don't have the background knowledge and they don't have the vocabulary, that's where we do see a dip. We also, I do want to highlight that we had 4th grade across the district had the largest number of non-tenured brand new teachers. So that could be a combination of the curriculum getting harder, meeting, and also newer staff who are as experienced with guided reading instruction. And so again, that's where we're going to focus our supports and efforts this year.
And I'm glad to hear about, as we talked about during TNL, the push-in K models throughout the district, and then moving to that model into another school.
Well,
into-
Chambers is expanding to
Right,
grades
and
1
then
and 2.
JFK also for 1 and 2. I mean, I think you know, that's kind of where we're gonna need to go to be able to build the skills so that we're not seeing these dips in third grade and
Agreed. One of the other things too that I didn't mention was the restructuring of our reading department and making sure that we have staff who have varied approaches to reading instruction at each of the buildings. We'll be able to now provide our students with the type of reading instruction they need, not the type we have. So that should, we're really hopeful that that's going to make a big
And
difference.
I've actually just kind of side note, I've heard, you know, at parties, like parents saying that to me, and I'm like, I do, Martin Gillingham, do you know that they're, you know, so, people are noticing that, and kids are bringing that up.
That's great.
Mr. Shaughnessy.
Do we have any data, or do we have a data slide similar to this for last year, 16 to 17, or so that we could look at third grade last year,
We can get it.
fourth grade this year, so that we can make a longitudinal comparison rather than just a grade level from year to year, because it's not measuring the same people, the same
We can
children.
definitely access that.
But actually, with EduView, which is, it doesn't always translate into presentation mode well, we can pull up almost any comparison or data that we want to. But that's,
Well, I like the fact that you're able to illustrate it this way, because then you can take a look at the individual students at that grade level, at that school, and see, you know, maybe what some of the techniques might work with them, what the obstacles are.
Exactly, and that's what we've done with our
Yeah.
students this
You
year.
got in your
We've gotten
teachers'
to a far more granular level, identifying the problems.
Our early data meetings, we're talking exactly about this because we don't have any common assessors yet. So the first thing we start off with is our STAR data and having teachers look at that. And exactly what you were talking about, looking down and looking at what are the skills that we need to drill down.
And just one more thing that I think, I'm not sure you mentioned it, but it's related to what you were just saying, is that in the past, we have waited for kids to kind of come in and for us to know them before we started our reading instructions, and you really were able to use the data and what, you know, instruction that happened last year to really hit the ground running with kids this year, starting the first week with intensive reading instruction and support for kids who needed it in the first week of school.
Right. Both of our teams made sure that principals had that information at the end of June for kids that were tier 3, so that we could, exactly what you said, hit the ground running right in the first day.
And also our classroom teachers at the elementary level were able to build their schedules around the reading needs of their students, which was, you know, so it wasn't, what time can I come in? They really blocked that time out, made it sacred, and then they built their schedules around that support.
Mr. Shaughnessy.
Do we get any useful data from the state 3 to 8 assessments?
Still under embargo.
Oh, did they get released today?
The scores did, but not the tests.
Doesn't know.
I know, well, that's the point, they're,
Oh, the scores were just released
Scores were
today?
released today.
they were today. And there's a lot of discussion about how valid the tests are.
Mrs. Jordan.
Has there been any thought to, since fourth grade seems to really be challenging, any thought to the push-in model for the reading staff, that to do a similar model that you've done for the kindergarten, in terms of enabling them to be there for a longer period of time and to attach to what the classroom teacher is doing? I just wondered if...
I think that's definitely part of the long-term plan, but I think we also really need to build those foundational skills first. And then as we start to see the benefits with our K-1-2 students, then we look to make that jump, because it is a big transition in reading, in the actual approach to reading instruction. It looks very different, you know, from first grade to fourth grade. And and there's a lot more depth in terms of comprehension, so.
Right. And has the reading department started right away since you had this?
They started the first week of school.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rosso and Ms. Tondell. And that concludes superintendent's report. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the consent agenda. Are there any resolutions that any trustee would like pulled from the consent agenda? Well, then I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So move.
Thank you. All right. Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Great. And is we will agree with donations?
Yes, we have DO8, whereas the MC Miller Craft Fair, which is to donate a three-piece computer speaker system to the Miller Middle School. And we also have DO9, whereas the Kingston City School District is a recipient of a generous donation from the E.C. Meyer PTA in the amount of $275.
Thank you very much. Okay, and now we've reached the portion of the board business, Board of Education. And reporting out, committees reporting out, first up this evening, teaching and learning.
Yeah, everybody did my job for me. Really nice. Thanks, I totally appreciate it. I think the only thing that I'll add is that, and it was a great conversation, you can see that we had it was really rich and important presentation. We talked also about the PSYCH program at KHS. PSYCH stands for Students with Interrupted Formal Education. I think we have 26 PSYCH students.
31.
31, okay.
Today.
So these students have a modified schedule where they have some self-contained classes with an ELL teacher that uses a specific curriculum to work with them around ELA. And they work together as a group, they have lunch as a group, they have some math classes together, and then they reintegrate into the rest of the, with the rest of the students. Is that correct? So we are really focusing on those students who come in with an interrupted education and really trying to work with them to help bring them forward. We talked a little bit about the pre-K and MAHAR. This year, there was, the creative curriculum was piloted at the JFK pre-K, and so that is the curriculum that we're thinking about using at the MAHAR program. We're just kind of seeing how it's going. It's available in English and Spanish, but it's based, unpromised, and so that is something that we're thinking about using at MAHAR. And we're still thinking about that program and still also working on how to recruit students into that program. And then we talked a bit about the reading block at the middle school, which we heard about a little bit here. There's a new, we're calling it a reading extension at the middle school, a specific period for reading instruction, and also a specific period for math instruction. So those alternate every other day. Students are differentiated by ability, and they work with their teachers and also receive support from the reading teacher, and ENL supports if they need it. And that's a new thing that's being piloted this year at the middle schools. And really hoping that that can provide support in math and reading that the kids at the middle schools really need. We also have a new schedule at the middle school. It's kind of back to the old schedule, really. I have to say my seventh grader really loves it, and he's thrilled. And it seems to be getting good reviews all around. So that's it. Given that the team actually gave most of my referral already. Our next meeting is the 15th, November 15th at 9:30. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much. And that brings us to Mr. Michael and Audit and Finance.
Yes, the Finance Committee met yesterday, and had a couple of things to report. We approved the financial reports for last month. We had a very brief discussion about the budget priming that's coming up at our next meeting. We'll be discussing as a board. And then we had also a discussion about the new state requirement about building reporting on equity and transparency. We're still getting more information from the state, so we're not be able to do anything right now until probably the end of the year, where we, require the patch, the report and the resolution. That's all, and the next meeting will be on October 20th. I'm sorry, October 23rd.
On the August 28th, the minutes for August 28th, there was mention of a pilot, an existing pilot that was discussed, and that Mr. Olson would brief us at the next meeting about that, and I don't think that happened. What was that pilot that was? So this is from the August 28th meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think,
the Audit and Finance.
yeah, I think Mr. Perna might have sent some information out about that today. That was a standard pilot which we were unaware of until after it was already adopted by the IDA. It was done by the company of one of the gentlemen who bid on this building back in the time. He's the sort of the other developer who's developing hotels around here. It involves 4 properties, one on Fair Street, one on John Street, one on Pearl Street, and the other is on Wall Street. I think they're probably somewhat known to you all. I could describe them so that you.
Yeah, so that's, so that, I think the minutes stated that it was the Hudson Valley Landmark.
Yeah, that's what he's,
LLC
that's
or
what he's
something
calling,
like that.
that's what he's calling himself, yes.
Yeah.
He's Mr. Blackman.
Well,
So,
That was a regular pilot.
regular pilot, which is why the board here was never consulted about how they felt about it.
Well, we have some.
Town and Fen, yeah.
Yeah, I was just mention about the upcoming pilot program for the Kingston project uptown. We're not sure yet how it's gonna look like, pilot program, whether it's gonna be regular or deviated. We still haven't got, definite proposal again. So, but
We need to make, move BOE 26. Yeah, 27. Claims auditor report.
okay, so I'd like to make a motion to move the approval of the reports.
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Thank you very much. And you're on again from Deed Stadium.
Oh,
Just
okay. I don't have anything positive to report as far as the stadium meeting. 2 things I would like to say. We didn't get any feedback yet from the state and about the details of the improvements on the stadium. So far it's still in the dark. We don't know what's going to happen. And the other thing, Saturday night we had scheduled repair of the turf yesterday, but I guess plenty of rain was postponed until next week. So, and the committee will be meeting next October 18th.
Any questions for Mr. Michael, either the finance or the Deed Stadium? Okay. So we'll move on to sort of that old business. Now you'll see here on the agenda it says board goals. The board goals we voted on, and the last goal, I think they're all retired. The last goal doesn't read like the rest of them. It was proposed, the day before that morning, and then we had a discussion about the wording, and it just reads very strangely, and this is on my head, it gives the superintendent a deadline of June which is after the superintendent evaluation, so I apologize for that, and I should have caught it. So, I'll pass on a possible reworking. It sounds more in keeping with the wording, and please, feel free to criticize and whatever. I know you will. Here. Let's put this way. Because I think we need to revise that, and maybe you don't agree with me, but we'll have that discussion. So it starts out with the board will, at the top, and we had a series of things the board would do, and the last one just says increase diversity, which is actually beyond our power to do because we're not doing the hiring. And it's my fault, also gave a deadline date of June. I don't know why I didn't catch that before the end of the meeting, but I didn't. So I'm proposing that we reword it to, it starts out at the top of the board will, require superintendent to expand efforts to achieve increased diversity in teaching administrative staff and report to the board by May 8th, 2018. So, take it forward, do whatever, but.
Well, it's better than the one we had.
I maintain
That's
we're all
faint praise.
tired.
I don't even remember. I don't remember the date.
Damnation by faint praise, it's been kind of long.
I don't like it says requires, I don't like that word, but.
Okay, what would you substitute? Request?
Encourage.
Encourage, that's more straightforward.
Or just be the superintendent.
I had advocate.
We can have a goal
Why
for,
don't we send superintendent?
we can have a board goal for Dr. Paolino.
Yes, we can, that's our.
Yes, we
That's what you do.
But to say, put your name in it, it's usually the district.
I think we're the ones who did last time, I believe.
Class?
Didn't we have some?
Do you like?
Superintendent will expand efforts to increase diversity in teaching administrative staff and
I think
report to the board
that's
meeting.
That's a goal.
Okay.
I agree, requires, a request is just all.
And encourages, like,
And require sounds
He
too
will do
harsh.
it. And he will report. I mean, it's just, he will make an effort. It doesn't mean he's going to do anything then make. Yeah, I think the superintendent will is fine.
Okay, the superintendent.
Well, it's still a very hard goal to reach each point.
He already has.
I know, but I'm saying it's still a hard job to do, because when you see applications, you don't see
You don't know.
color or race or religion.
we can't,
So you're not-
the efforts to increase the diversity are different than the hiring process.
That's right.
So now it reads, superintendent will expand efforts to achieve increased diversity in teaching administrative staff and report to the board by May 8th, 2018.
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion? Maybe she should just move along. We want to be arbitrary. Okay, all those, no? Oh, you're good? Okay. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, I'm gonna move this, and I'm gonna ask Mr. Perna to post this as the new goal 8, and it's more in keeping with the other goals. And you maintain that we're very overtired by the time we get to goal 8. All right, any other old business? And look at this.
I have two old businesses.
Okay.
One is that we usually around this time get a class size update.
Ooh.
There's class, there's, what in front of you? Right there.
Oh, that's what this is.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Because yours came out of my file, I think.
Right, so this was here when we got here
Yes,
today.
yes.
So,
So that's yours to look at.
You did the door prize.
Here, just to give you the, I'll give you a Reader's Digest version of that report. And two things. One, this is an example of what we can do through EduView, one of the new programs that we use for our data. It's really a great tool. I can run reports about almost anything that we do in the district. But so this is our census, and what we always focus on is our K-1-2 and our class sizes. We are in line with the board's goal to be below 22 or fewer in K-1-2 with all schools except for Edson, which right now we are at 23 in each of those sections. We're talking right now about adding some teacher assistant help in those classrooms because, to be honest with you, we don't have any more rooms. So I couldn't expand to another classroom if we wanted to.
You're right, this is not reader friendly at all.
No, but it doesn't lend itself to presentation.
And what about GW? I mean, we've had that conversation about how GW is supposed to be bigger, but I think there's been some class size creep there, and my understanding is that it's actually now a little bit too big. Those class sizes.
I haven't had that conversation.
You haven't heard that, or you haven't had that?
I mean, there was conversation about it a little bit last year. We added some teacher assistant help there, but that was the last time.
So do these Ks that are at 28, it looks like?
Where at
At GW?
well, but that's a misleading number at GW also. This is a misleading number at GW because that includes 3-year-olds, that includes 4-year-olds,
I know,
that
but it's
includes,
kids-
so they put them all together in that group.
Okay, but it's kids in a classroom. Are there 28
Yes.
kids in a classroom?
Yes,
Regardless of how old they are?
right,
With how many teachers?
with teachers and 2 teacher assistants. I mean,
With
there's a
teachers,
Montessori
we-
model.
I know, but yes, I understand the Montessori model, but what I heard last year, and what I have been hearing for a while, is that the Montessori model does allow for slightly bigger classrooms, but that the class size is actually crept up, and it's actually.
Well, if we're holding the regular classes at 22, GW believes they can handle a few more. 28 is a few more.
All right.
But Dr. Paulson wants to say something. Go ahead.
Well, remember those classrooms in the children's house now have 2 teaching assistants in each room?
So I guess that's what I was getting at. So
So-
they have 2 teaching assistants now, and last year they only had 1.
They only had 1, and then when we had the audit for UBK, the guide gave us the guidance directive that we needed to put additional supports in place. So we put an additional teacher assistant in each of the children's house classrooms. So we now
In the spring
have
of last year we
In the
did that.
spring of last year, we did that. So
Right.
so we now have 28 students with 3 adults.
Okay, so, and that's the children's house, and that's 4-year-olds.
4-year-olds and 5-year-olds. So there are 55 4-year-olds in the UPK program, and the rest are kindergarten students. So it's a mix, so they only put a certain number of 4-year-olds in each of the children's house programs.
And then is our class sizes still larger than the rest of the district for the next level as well?
Yes.
So I think
Our
that-
E1 classrooms with the grade configuration and the way they're designed, they're basically a third, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3.
And so it's hard to see this, so that's about 29, 27 is what it looks like. Do those also have 3 adults in them?
They do not.
It just have,
No,
they have 2
3.
adults?
They have 2 adults. Some of the classes that have integrated programs have an additional
Right.
consultant teacher in them, but not a lot.
All right, so I think for the children's house, I mean, there's a ratio issue there, so that has to be dealt with, right? And
In the
so-
children's house, yeah,
Right.
because of the
And
4-year-olds.
so to have 3 adults actually really helps, and I think it makes sense. I'm just responding to what I heard last year, and there was always a contradiction between what I was hearing from the school and from parents, what I was hearing from parents specifically, and what we were saying at the board was that, oh, it's supposed to be like that, but then I was saying, no, it's not supposed to be like that, and so I was just wondering how we reconcile that, and it sounds like with at the children's house with the addition of an additional adult, that works. I mean, I don't know anything about the other things, so I guess we'll see.
The only request for additional support that I had heard was in the children's house, not at the E1 level.
I just have a question about the data graph and how it reads. So if you just look at Chambers, it says K, so that's the kindergarten total. KSE would be those are inclusion classrooms, and that's how many special ed are in each classroom.
Correct.
And then what's KSSB?
Self-contained. No, I'm sorry.
Self-contained additional
Permission.
What is that?
Special permission, sorry.
Special permission, okay. Special permission.
Special.
Okay.
Superintendent special permission.
Or, yes.
Because the inclusions are by 812, they're by themselves, right?
Right.
Yeah. 121.
Oh, they're down to
Yeah.
something.
That's right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about the class size?
So will we get an update next week, or at our next meeting, because this tends to change a lot and everything will be able
Yeah, we're probably, I usually wait, if you remember, I usually wait till like middle of October before I present this to you. So I would kind of think that would be when I would give it to you in a more, again, this was just kind of giving you your update, so you have something in front of you and you can take a look. And we can have a conversation if you want to, but I'll make this more reader friendly for next meeting, and we will, we can discuss it. I'd say by October 10th, we're usually pretty solid.
One more quick, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you had a follow-up? No. Okay, go ahead.
So I feel as though every year we're talking about Edson and the crowding there, and we have flirted the idea of possibly redistricting. Is that something that may be more firmly discussed this year, or? Should I require who have worked?
Shall we start controversy so early in the year, Rita?
I mean, Edson's not the one with the biggest classes in Edson.
Chambers, but
Chambers or even Graves has. been
Edson we're out of room,
When you get to the older.
Edson we're out of space, but.
Yeah, and you know, we have a lot of conversations to have about how we are using our facility as far as and redistricting our students. And we've started looking at that in earnest. From so many levels, from equity level to, you know, distribution of students level. I mean, and, you know, there's been some kind of like holy grail lines that aren't crossed for certain schools to other schools that I think that's the kind of thing we need to look at and tackle. You know, 209 is not the Great Wall of China. You know, different things like that. We need to start thinking about how we're distributing, you know, how we're cutting up our school zones. So that's part of what we're discussing right now.
Mr. Shaughnessy?
There'll be a lot of people with next.
The old business stuff?
Yeah, this is still on this.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, I thought when I looked at this before the meeting, I saw a total.
At the end.
Top, very top, front page, 6,238.
So that's not significantly different than the number that we got last year.
I think we have five. I think it's 5 more students. I think that's what it is. It's a single-digit number increase.
But that's better than a decrease. Yeah. One question I had, I was thinking about this the other night. How many students do we have that are placed out of district? And where do they turn up in the enrollment count to do that?
We have about 110 students in our district placement, and they are not included in this calculation. So our population actually, you know, is higher than what's in this system, because they're not put into this system in that way.
Okay, any other questions about class size and enrollment?
I just would like to make a comment that I
Yes.
appreciate the efforts of the board to continue to support smaller classes at primary level. It's very, very important.
Okay, any other old business? Oh, sorry.
Business.
Okay, go ahead.
Last week, we had a GW parent get up and speak at public session and ask a bunch of questions, and I'm wondering if we can get that response that was given to them.
Actually, I have not responded. I had planned to respond tonight, because I figured they'd be here. And let's see if I can find what I wrote. Well, I can't find what I wrote, but I'll tell you what it is. So, first and foremost, our priority with GW right now is going to be finding a replacement for Ms. Hannah. And I do agree with the speaker that we need to find someone who is Montessori trained and/or willing to become Montessori certified and trained. So we're going to advertise that position. We're going to start probably right after the holidays, right after December, because posting now for the position, people aren't thinking that way. So we'll post in January, we'll post in publications, we'll post in our usual on our OLAS, which is our online application system, and we'll do some recruitment as well. So I think we want to have a Montessori trained person as well. Conversation with about 3-year-olds is kind of up in the air. Actually, Dr. Felicello is right now actively pursuing funding from the state for 3-year-olds. So we are looking there. As far as 5th and 6th grade, that was, we're not really talking about that right now. And again, the priority is the new principal. The 5th and 6th grades going back there, while in concept, that came out as part of a conversation about the concept around a true Montessori program and how the grade span should run. Right now, that's not something that's on the table. The 2 things we're looking at right now are the 3-year-olds and replacing this with a qualified Montessori person. Again, we might find someone who is highly qualified, highly motivated, and able and willing, and has that, and is in agreement with that philosophy, who we can have trained and certified as Montessori. We're not going to pass over a quality leader who would be interested in becoming a Montessori principal just because they're not already trained.
Any other old business? Okay, moving on to new business. We have on the agenda District Superintendent salary cap, which is something that came out last week. We received an email and a recommended letter of support. And I know we need to discuss this. This is the District Superintendent for BOCES, for Ulster BOCES. And the salary has been frozen. There's been a cap on the salary for a while. So this was a letter that they reached out on behalf of with the Kingston City School Board of Education. You shall have one of these in front of you, which is a component district of the Ulster BOCES. I'm writing to urge your approval of S3203 and 212A, which would update the cap on the BOCES district superintendent salaries. Currently, a BOCES district superintendent salary is kept at 98% of the Commissioner of Education's 2003-04 salary, or 106% of previous year's salary, whichever is less. The legislation would update the cap to 98% of the Commissioner's 2018-19 salary, while retaining the 6% year-over-year cap. It's now been 15 years since the cap was updated. District superintendents play a critical role in helping shape and implement important education policies that directly impact our students. It's essential that BOCES can recruit and retain highly qualified individuals for these leadership positions. District superintendents are by statute the education leader for their BOCES component districts and our communities. According to the State Education Department, the role of the district superintendents has been defined as education change agent, regional planner and coordinator, and field representative for the New York State Education Department, a key liaison between the state and local component districts. Our board has the right and responsibility to hire a superintendent. When we find ourselves needing to fill that role, we recruit, select, and work our hardest to secure and retain the best person to lead our district. However, the members of our BOCES board are limited in their ability to offer a competitive compensation package to their leaders and candidates, which can make retention a serious challenge. Our district depends on Ulster BOCES for a variety of programs and services. We urge you to join us in supporting the BOCES by signing S3203A/A212A. Sincerely, it would be Kingston City Board of Education. So, discussion. I guess maybe I should put a motion out first.
Okay, I'll move it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now discussion.
So, I think it's really an important thing that the state should do. It's increasingly difficult for BOCES districts to find qualified candidates like that. And also, it doesn't make any it doesn't make any distinction between the size of the BOCES either. I mean, you know, Orange Ulster BOCES is several times larger than Ulster BOCES or Dutchess BOCES as well. And, you know, so, I mean, it really should be up, I mean, within that framework, I know you don't, I mean, the reason is I don't want the BOCES superintendent to make more than the Commissioner of Education, because the BOCES superintendent is supposed to be the representative of the Commissioner of Education within that BOCES district, so it does make sense that the cap should be whatever that is, whatever, but, you know, to not change it for 15 years. There's just no good reason for that. It's harmful.
Could you just, I might miss this, who drafted this letter?
It came from this.
Do we think Dr. Corey is going to retire anytime soon?
I hope not.
I know, I mean, I'm just,
I mean-
flipping that, but
I mean, that's what I would like to say also, like, you know, Dr. Corey's been outstanding, the backbone of our school district, you know what I mean? They have introduced so many programs, you know, to, you know, the county. So I would definitely support some increase, you know what I mean? They deserve a lot more than, you know, they're getting paid, so.
I think that we've hired him for, this contract is, for, right now, I think 3 or 4 more years. His goal is to reach 50 years in education, and he still has a couple of years to go.
His contract ends in your mind.
Well, I'm in favor of this, that's all.
So before the years.
Okay, all those in favor of supporting this letter, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to execute that communication. Thank you very much. Any other new business? Board announcements. Any board announcements? Yes, Mrs. Jordan.
I just wanted to remind everyone that they still can register to vote. The last day to register for November 6th is October 12th. And you can go to ulstercounty.gov elections/registration, or you can go to Wall Street, 284 Wall Street. Or you can go to a post office, library, civic, or town clerk. You can download the forms, and you can also get an absent, you have to you have to apply for the absentee ballot by October 30th. So in order to get an absentee ballot, you have to get that by October 30th, and it can be returned in person up to November 5th. But it has to be postmarked by October 30th.
Where did you get that? It must be returned in person?
No, you don't have to,
Oh, you should-
but if you send it in, it has to be absentee. You can apply in person till November 5th and drop it off. You can even drop it off on election day in person, but you have to postmark it by October 30th.
No.
Yes.
No. Oh, that absentee ballot.
The absentee ballot.
Yes, but you can't drop that off in person.
It says that you can on the site.
Then why would you just vote in person?
I know, it seemed ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
But,
Why would you have an absentee?
yes, you can get someone else to deliver.
I think the important thing is to register to
Register,
vote.
you can still register, and you can get an absentee ballot.
Yeah.
What was the date for registration?
By October
Registration is
12th.
October 12th.
If you've moved, you need to re-register.
Right.
You do.
And students can register at the high school, no?
I would,
The
You
library.
have to be
With the
18 on the
library.
day you fill out your registration. So you can be like 18 on the 6th if you have it.
You know, there were some people last year or the year before saying that if you're going to be 18 by election day, you could register before you were 18, but that's not true.
No, it isn't. The day you apply is the day.
however, if parents do have children at home who are 18 and not yet registered to vote, they can do that. You can also pick up an application, well, you can pick it up yourself at the Board of Elections. The Department of Motor Vehicles has a whole stack of them
I think we
outside.
have some out here.
And we have some out in the hall, so.
They make great gifts.
Great tips. Thank you.
For what?
Any other board announcements? Okay. All right, that brings us to the second opportunity for public participation. I should mention, coffee and conversation this Saturday at the farmer's market from 9:30 to 2 is on your schedule. And 9 to 2, excuse me, but 9:30 is the schedule. The rest doesn't matter. If it's 9, it's 9. So,
I'm going to change mine to cover, so I'll be
okay. We have two teams. Can we just double check that I'm on a team? Anybody else?
What hours?
I'm afraid I'm not gonna make it,
Okay.
I know
It's my brow shower.
Okay, good excuse.
Give them about 5 more months.
Just-
I don't recall what time I said.
Yeah, there was another team.
Did you get our list of the dates that we available? I know I do.
Yeah, yours and Suzanne's. Anybody else?
So it's supposed to, so is it just me and just
And Nora. So there's one more person and we could do 2-hour, or 2.5-hour shifts.
I can try, I can't promise.
Okay, so
which
would you
shift
want
do
to
you
do early
need?
or late? I'll do early. No?
I'm gonna have to do earlier by
Okay.
And when does it end?
Well,
When does your shift end?
I'm gonna
9 to 11:30?
Yeah.
So you need someone at 11:30?
Yeah,
Yeah, I can do that.
11:30,
I will
11:30.
try.
Okay, so I'll see you there, and if you're not there, you're not there.
And we're going to have a revised handout.
Yes, we do.
I was just gonna say, I have a box.
And a banner.
Oh, and a banner.
So
So my
my
office
office
is ready to
ready
go,
to
and
go
we're
take
tonight,
it.
if
Yes.
you want.
And there's a table, tent, and a chair provided.
But there's
Yeah.
only one chair
So if you
provided,
want to
so
bring another
bring a
chair.
Group of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
I'm not sure which table.
Okay,
So if you're not pick up the box before you leave
I will.
tonight.
I'll make sure I do that. Okay, cool. All right, public participation. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.